Everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Lokhir Fellheart in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. One of the best legendary lords in the game and one of the best of the Dark Elves. Only Morathi is better for the Dark Elves, and I would honestly say that if you're looking at playing a short campaign and a more focused campaign, Lokhir easily wins the crown. But there are a couple of reasons behind that. Make no mistake, Lokhir can have a really good long campaign as well. It's not that. That's really not the issue in his particular situation. But he certainly excels more in the early game than he does in the late game. So I will do my best at explaining why that situation, why that particular dynamic does actually exist in Lokhir's campaign. But keep in mind, like, all Dark Elves are good in both early and late game stages of Total War Warhammer 3. Morathi is just flat out the best because she has that Sinnelleos corruption, so the extra money that she's going to earn through that Sinnelleos corruption and the extra control she'll have will certainly suit her better. She also can get more sorceresses than anyone else, so there's going to be a good level of power as a result of that, which shouldn't be underestimated in any particular campaign. Now, the Dark Elves are an incredibly powerful race. Like, you can see that what I've just done over here, right? I've just constructed a tier 2 barracks on turn 1 using the instant construction of slaves. I've gotten 2 heroes, 2 masters, because you can get masters at tier 2 as the Dark Elves. And I am recruiting 4 units as the Dark Elves. Now, this is partly because Lokhir does have a Black Arc as a starting unit. He does start with a Black Arc, and it's actually a special Black Arc because he does have the Helm of the Blessed Dread, which does increase campaign movement range and casualties post-battle, as well as income from sacking and looting settlements. But the Dark Elves in general are incredible in terms of their early game aggressive potential. And if there's one thing I've talked a lot about on this channel again and again and again, it's the fact that having a strong, fast-paced early game and the tools needed to succeed in terms of that early game aggression is what makes a campaign and a race significantly stronger than others. This is one of the reasons the Dark Elves are one of the strongest races in the entirety of Warhammer 3. They excel at that early game aggression. They don't even care so much about money as they care about slaves, because they can use slaves to literally print money. Now, you can say the Chaos Dwarves do the same thing, but here's the thing. The Chaos Dwarves are actually weaker in this respect, because the Chaos Dwarves have to balance it out between materials, between armaments, maintaining the labor production that you would have during a particular campaign. So it's not like, oh, you play Chaos Dwarves, you just get slaves for free and you use them to print money. That is not how that particular campaign dynamic works at all. Quite very differently. You have to manage it. Sure, you can use a good portion of your slaves in a Chaos Dwarf campaign to get things like influence and the like, but you are going to have to make some decisions with regards to slaves and how you're going to use them during the course of any particular campaign over there. So you are not just going to be able to utilize slaves willy-nilly. Whereas in a Dark Elf campaign, you will be able to utilize slaves however much you want, as long as you're in a positive situation with respect to the slaves. As long as you're not running out of slaves in a Dark Elf campaign, you are going to be good. It is particularly crazy. And Lokhir, more so than many other legendary lords in the entire game, more so than any other lord in a Dark Elf campaign, excels in the capability of capturing a significant number of slaves very, very early on in his campaign. The reason he does so is because Black Arcs, in particular his Black Arc, do increase the amount of slaves you can capture post-battle. There are certain buildings, and the one you start with does have that landmark on a Black Arc that will certainly increase that. Now, mind you, I'm using some auto-resolve mods over here to just not have to find the battles manually, but all the battles would be winnable easily here. Like, in a campaign, like, there's maybe 1 or 2 battles that can give you some, you know, trouble, as it were, in a particular campaign. This army over here, this is hilarious. Like, they're thinking, it's like, oh, we will stop them. It's like, 40 Black Arc Corsairs, maybe I should have gotten a bit more, but it doesn't matter. So some gold, some Black Arc Corsairs, not really too much of an issue. Actually, let's just chase them down, finish them off. Okay. Now, Lokhir excels at this because he has the ability of getting the Sacrifice of Cain, which, among other things, beyond the fact that it gives him 50% post-battle loot and 20% casualty replenishment, and he can use it for the first 15 turns very early on in his campaign, which the level of power that exists with that is biblical, to say the least. But not only can Lokhir do all of that in his particular campaign, he can just capture a lot of settlements very, very quickly during the course of his campaign without really having to stop. He is, in a lot of ways, unstoppable. And that's where it gets kind of crazy when you start playing in him and start realizing just how insane this guy is. Like, you are playing a faction that is really going to be slowed down by very, very few things during the course of your entire campaign experience. You're going to take advantage of a lot of things during the course of that campaign experience, a lot of mechanics, and what can I say? It is going to be crazy what you will be able to do. You can also gain slaves by raiding. You can gain slaves by having ports. So for instance, I have the Dark Elf Landing over here. That is going to be more slaves. And more slaves. The more slaves you have, the more instant construction you have. The more instant construction you have, the stronger you end up being during the course of a campaign. Now, Dark Elves do have some issues. They don't have an encamp stat, so they're kind of weak against ambushes. You can ambush quite effectively the Dark Elves. Dark Elves, and this is the problem with the Dark Elf AI in particular, why the Dark Elves, despite being a really powerful race, tend to do poorly under AI control. Dark Elves do not have global recruitment, they have Black Arc recruitment. Which, Black Arc recruitment, while certainly capable of getting the job done, does have its own issues in a campaign that you will need to overcome. So for instance here, I am just moving with a Black Arc, and I am going to get more of these no, I'm not even going to get those, because I already defeated the army that was going to march against me on land. So there's very few things in a Dark Elf campaign that can really slow you down or even stop you from the beginning, and that's where Lokhir comes in play. So Lokhir, he gets 5% income from slaves. He can improve Corsairs and, well, Hydras basically, or the discount Hydras, if you will. Every major port will allow the recruitment of Black Arc. So over here, I can get another Black Arc. I will eventually. There's another port over here, so that's 2. So that's 3 in total that I will be able to get during the course of this campaign. And then you have that right that gives you that insane level of casualty replenishment. 15 turns may not seem that much, especially when you consider the fact that you have a 25 turn downtime. But this is the crazy, insane aspect about it. You have 15 turns that you can use. Let's say you use it at turn 10, right? You pop that up at turn 10. And so for the next 15 turns until turn 25, you're running around with insane levels of casualty replenishment, insane level of post-battle loot. That is unimaginable power, really, in a significant number of ways that other factions would scream for. So for instance here, I'm not using it just yet. I'm not activating it just yet because I've got other things that I'm focused on. But eventually, soon enough, I will. And once I do activate it, things are going to get pretty damn nasty for those that might stand in my way. So I'm just gonna start getting a Black Arc over there, start recruiting a secondary army, over there. Now, the nice thing about Black Arcs is because you can recruit units at 50% discount, at the 50% upkeep situation. What that really means is you can have 2 full armies, but at the 50% discount, which nullifies, well, a lot of the issues you might have otherwise. And as you might notice, Black Arcs do not have any kind of supply line themselves. Now, you might get into a situation where, obviously, you do have supply lines, but as long as you have an army in a Black Arc, and you're recruiting an army in a Black Arc, you will not have to worry at all about the issue of supply lines. And you can increase the Black Arc growth. Black Arcs can grow fairly slowly, all things considered, though you can improve that situation by quite a substantial amount if you're playing your cards correctly and during the course of a campaign. You know, funnily enough, you have an objective. You have an objective that will make you friends with Cafe for whatever reason. So over here, like this port is tier 2. We're going to pop the right over here. And that's just one of the rights. We do also have the enough right, which will become active after I reach rank 12. So that's 50% income from sacking, 20% campaign movement range. The rights that Lokhir has in his campaign alone, the rights alone, are ridiculous, suffice to say. Like, absolutely crazy level power through these rights in particular. And fun fact, by the way, Black Arcs can capture settlements. So if I move the Black Arc over here, I don't want to waste the movement range that I just spent with Lokhir. Well, you know, I don't have to. Then I can now get replenishment via the sea. That is fantastic. And just get more units on the Black Arc, start recruiting more units. Since I have a decent number of slaves, I could even use those slaves to start recruiting, to get a bit, just a bit of income, because I will get more slaves by the time Lokhir is rank 12. So you have a campaign here where it's really, really difficult to run out of money. You have a campaign dynamic where it is difficult to lose. It's very easy to win. Sure, you might have to fight all of these battles manually, but consider this, Lokhir is only rank 7, but he's already running around like he's some top tier legendary lord in the game. With his masters and his sorceress. And normally you would suffer because you don't have casualty replenishment from a death hag, but well, Lokhir doesn't care. He has the passive effect of a death hag on all his armies through a right that is going to carry him into the mid game and closer to the late game. And by the time that right expires, you're so powerful that it really doesn't matter what else you're facing. The only concern really is like, how far do you want to go with all of this, right? Like, how far do you want to push it? Do you want to piss off all of Cafe? Do you want to go at war with both Xiaoming and Miaoying? You can. You have the tools needed to succeed in that. You probably don't want to occupy all of Cafe yourself. But that situation is just the early game. Long campaign victory conditions is where it gets a bit painful because you have to wipe out all of Wolfwan, which is not really, it's not really a fun dynamic, I'm going to tell you right here, right now. It is not really a fun experience to have to wipe out all of Wolfwan. But at the same time, when we're looking at what we can do here, the possibilities of diplomacy are very, very significant. as well. Like, surprisingly, very few people actually hate the Dark Elves. Some do, sure, but many factions will actually get along quite well with the Dark Elves, even if it might seem crazy. Oh, and we shouldn't ignore the fact that this ability gives you the Dark Conduit spell, which can do quite a bit of damage in battle. So, yeah, you're not just playing a faction that's really powerful. You're playing a faction that is on a completely different level, and you have the rivers of Cathay to also use with your armies to navigate. And you can recruit heroes of every type from a Black Arc. And you start with one, you can get more of them very early on. The one limiting concern that you're going to have in your campaign is like how many resources, how many armies you're going to want to devote to Black Arcs as opposed to just going on land. There are different strategies on this. Some people just play with one army and the initial Black Arc and just capture a lot of territory and earn a lot of money and then worry about building other armies. Personally, I do like starting to build the second army as quickly as possible because, well, I want to conquer Cathay, suffice to say. So that is absolutely... So we can... Okay. That is not right. Okay, let's see if we can do this. And we get the decisive victory. And then we just loot and occupy it. And then move Lokhir back on the sea. Get that replenishment going again. There we go. Not a problem. Their insanity continues. And we instantly construct here. We start getting economic buildings. We have the port, so we're not going to face a slave deficiency in our campaign. We're actually going to earn slaves during the course of the campaign. So the sheer level of power that this gives you during the course of your campaign is insanity in itself. And that's just the early game. Once you deal with the early game, it's like, what do you do for the rest of it? Well, you have the strongest naval force in the game because you have no limit on Black Arcs, the Horde armies. You know what one of the problems of the Vampire Coast actually is? The Vampire Coast is bad simply because... and I might actually start moving in this particular force over here to deal with the rebellion that's going to pop off right there. The Vampire Coast is bad because they have those limitations. Dark Elves, Lokhir does not have a limitation on the number of armies that he can field. That is why he is incredibly strong. He just needs more ports. So the more ports you gain, the more major ports you gain in a campaign, the stronger off you'll be during the course of that campaign. And so you start escalating and start escalating and start escalating, and it gets out of control really quickly without anything to really hold you in check. And what about the Cathayan factions? Will they be able to stop you? Probably not as much as you might think. The reason they won't be able to stop you, the reason the Cathayan factions will not be able to stop you at all, comes down to the fact that they're pretty far away from you, so by the time you actually encounter them, you'll be in such a dominant position that, and you'll have an army, like Lokhir's army could defeat either Miao Ying or Zhao Ming in a one-on-one fight. Even if they brought 2 stacks of troops, it would still be a hard fight for them, because your troops are actually better than the Jade Warriors that they have. They're just as heavily armored, but they're significantly better in melee, significantly better at damage dealing. Range-wise, Dark Shards are flat out better than Jade Warrior crossbowmen. And you have more heroes that Cathay has as well. So what is Cathay going to do? I'd say they're just going to up and die, honestly, in the course of a campaign. So those are some of the advantages you do possess during the course of a campaign like this. And while you may face rebellions are not really a downside in a campaign, one should point out. Just gonna get a bit of growth and move over here, put the raiding stance, maybe print some money as well, because I do need that money, and I want more Black Arc Corsairs. This is where we get. Also, funnily enough, your Black Arc Corsairs actually have, your Black Arcs have leaders that can level up. Imagine if the ogre camps, like this should be like the standard that ogres live by. They don't have this. They flat out don't. So like Lokhir has a lot of lovely things. He's got a crazy toolbox. He's got powerful infantry that has a bonus versus infantry with high levels of leadership, armor, melee attack, etc. He's got incredibly potent ranged units with a good level of armor piercing. The manticore that he starts with is crap, but he does have a huge amount of hero capacity. And that's just what he starts with, not what his insane level of potential actually is during the campaign. Like, this is turn 9, and I'm just slowly, ever so surely, recruiting my way up to 3 armies, and the make or break point is like whether or not I'm going to be able to recruit a 4th army. I am wiping off factions left and right, and they're not going to be able to stop me. That army, that rebellion you're seeing over there, it's like it's going to last as long as the Black Ark, until the Black Ark sails over there, assuming that the settlement itself that isn't capable enough to defend against it. And fun thing about Black Arks, they can recruit lords as well in a campaign. Oh yes. So if you have an army that's just out of reach by land, well, just recruit a lord and send a lord to deal with it, or have a lord following after a Black Ark, because it's like not really gonna be too much of a problem. Those are just some of the benefits you do have in a campaign like this, and it's crazy. I am not gonna sugarcoat it. It is, simply put, absolutely insane what you can achieve in a campaign like this. Like, consider this army. It's like, oh, peasants and Jade Warriors, like, that's gonna be a threat. No. And then it's like you just sack it, and it's like, let's claim the city of Karankar, and it's like, Karankar is now mine, and, well, Karankar is now dead. Well, whoopsie, but, hey, here.
Fate favors us.
Yeah, he doesn't really have a dual start, but funnily enough, having vision over here is actually quite incredibly useful, because it gives you vision over the other Dark Elven factions, which can become your trading partners. That's another thing that Lokhir has as a fairly significant benefit in his campaign over here, is that he can utilize that. So you have a legendary lord that cannot be easily stopped, that cannot be slowed down. And what are you going to do against him? Nothing. There is nothing anyone can do against Lokhir. They can try, they would end up failing. It's insane. It's simply put, insane what Lokhir can do. Now, you have to understand, I do prefer Morathi, and the reason I prefer Morathi is as insane as Lokhir is, he does have that rebellion issue that is going to be slowing him down in a campaign, in a long campaign. He does have a start position, so if you're looking to play a long campaign, having to deal with Teclis and having to deal with others is not exactly a fun experience. That is true. But at the same time, like, if you want to play a campaign where you're conquering Cathay, it can be a fantastic experience. And that's all I had to say. Costin, signing out.